Our esteemed guest today needs little introduction. We're very happy and honored to have Ambassador Mike Huckabee with us. Ambassador, welcome.
Thank you very much. It's great to be with you. You said our guest doesn't need an introduction, but I was thinking, but I'd sure like one, a really nice one. That would be great. Actually, don't worry about it, because I've always said that people who are interested in all the biographical information, if they're interested, they already know it. And if they don't know it, they're not interested. So we'll just get into it.
Fair enough. Fair enough. Well, we're very, very happy to have you on. And the events of the last few weeks and really the last several years have sort of led to this extremely pivotal moment in history. And, the narratives surrounding Israel and its relationship to Christians are swirling and flying, in some cases, seemingly out of control. So we're very happy to have you here and looking to set the record straight. It's also, of course, always an honor to have Calev Myers, my brother and co-founder of Arise, He's the founder and chairman of the newly launched project, the First Judeo-Christian Zionist Congress. And so let's jump right in. Now, Calev and Ambassador Huckabee, I know you guys have been working together quite a bit in Israel. And I want to start by let's just talk about some of the elephants in the room. Israel is its own unique place with its own unique population, and it has its own unique relationship to Christians. And I want to just jump in and talk a little bit about the perception and perspective of Israelis on Christendom as a whole. We will get into the situation on the ground, but let's just talk about the perspective, the way that Israelis as a society view Christians.
You mentioned this, the elephant in the room. I don't mind talking about the elephant. I just don't want to clean up after it. So as long as we are clear on that, I'm good to go. Look, I think having been coming here for close to 53 years, this summer will mark that length of time. I think it's important to say that over these 53 years that I've been coming, and this last year as an ambassador, I found that the attitude of Israelis toward Christians has evolved into something incredibly positive and well received. There was a time when I think that there were many Israelis who questioned the motives of Christians. Why did they love the Jewish people? Why were they supportive of Israel? Was it some eschatological reason? And I think they came to realize that, no, it's not that we are trying to bring about the end of the world, or that we are in any way disparaging of the Jewish people or the state of Israel. In fact, it is the opposite. As Christian believers, who are people who believe the Bible, I like to say we're people of the book, evangelicals specifically. We believe the scriptures, so we understand that the Jewish faith is the trunk of the tree from which our own branches come from. And whether we are looking at the Old Testament and we're seeing the prophetic record throughout the Old Testament pointing to those days, both of the resurrection of the new Israel that we see today, where the dry bones have come to live and the desert is blooming, things that I've literally seen with my own eyes over the past 53 years, or whether it is just the extraordinary view that there wouldn't be a Christianity without Judaism. Jesus was Jewish. The Apostle Paul was Jewish. The early church, they were all Jews. If it weren't for Jews, there wouldn't be a Christian faith. Without a Judeo-Christian foundation, there wouldn't be Western civilization. And without that, there wouldn't be an America. So both in my spiritual heritage as a Bible-believing Christian and my American heritage as a very grateful U.S. citizen, I look at my roots, and they go back 3,800 years to Mount Moriah, when God told Abraham, I'm going to be a blessing to the world through you, your son Isaac, and through Jacob. So I receive that. I accept it. It's not that complicated. And I think more Jewish people now than ever understand that they don't need to be suspicious of us. They need to be grateful to us.
Couldn't agree more.
Yeah, if I could jump in as a representative of Christian communities in Israel, right? So I think a lot of people know here that my father's Jewish, our father's Jewish, our mother's a Christian. And from an Orthodox perspective, we're not really even defined as Jews because Judaism goes to maternal heritage. And so I would say I'm a Christian from a Jewish background, right? And I go to congregation every week and worship with people of Christian faith. Our family is 100% integrated into society. Myself into the business world, the legal world, my kids into public schools. I would say whenever you ask, what does the Israeli society think about something? First of all, that's a very complicated question because the Israeli society is very complicated. We're a very heterogeneous society. Okay. So even on the spectrum of religion, you have everywhere from very, very ultra religious Jews who would probably not see Christianity with a lot of fondness, all the way to extremely secular people who could care less about or may even hate every religion, no matter what it is. And in between, you have this probably 80 to 90% of Israeli society that is just people who are minding their own business, who you might hear about Christianity and think, well, that's interesting. It's not so connected to my life, but these are good people like everyone else. And so it depends. There's so many questions. It depends where you are on that spectrum, on the religious spectrum. To say what you think about Christianity. If we want to talk about an even bigger elephant in the room, there are entities within Israel that have successfully created irrational phobias around missionary work. So like I said, if you're on the very, very kind of end of the spectrum of the ultra religious, and you say, okay, a Christian is somebody who is a missionary is somebody who wants to convert everybody from Judaism to a foreign religion. They're worse than Hitler. He wanted to destroy all of our bodies. They want to destroy our souls, and they make sure there's nothing left of Judaism. But when you really look at the facts on the ground, Israel has great laws regarding a missionary. I think they're good laws regarding missionary work. And so you cannot actively proselytize a minor, somebody under 18 years old. I support that. I don't want somebody from another religion proselytizing my children of a minor age, right? And you also can't bribe people. So you can't give people a gift in kind. You can't be a humanitarian organization that's handing out sandwiches to homeless people on the street together with New Testaments and kind of taking advantage of a vulnerable situation. And so in each of those laws kind of protects vulnerable people from being taken advantage of by missionary activities. Outside of that, there is complete freedom of religion, freedom of conscience, freedom of speech. Any adult can share their faith with any other adult in Israel. There are no limitations. And so I think that because of certain phobias that have been advanced by, the religious sectors in our society, they have created those laws. I'm not aware of anybody ever actually being indicted, arrested, much less put on trial or accused of either of those laws, because they just don't happen. So when you actually look at that issue, which is very it's a very sensitive issue in Jewish Christian relations, it's almost non-existent actually within the Israeli society. And most people of Christian faith just live their life in complete freedom, worship in freedom, work their jobs in freedom, and have equal rights protected by the government. I would say, when there are issues of harassment, and there have been issues of harassment. So once in a while, you'll have a situation where radical groups will kind of whip up the mob into a frenzy. If you remember, like 2.5 years ago during Shavuot, the Pentecost, there was a Christian / Messianic Jewish worship concert in downtown Jerusalem. As the crowd was coming in, this is that King of Kings congregation, Ambassador. I'm sure you're aware of them. So people were coming in. My daughter was actually singing in that choir. All of a sudden, you had something like 200 young men just kind of mob the entrance of this event, and they started pushing and kicking and whistling and throwing water on people. It got really ugly because somebody had whipped them on and said, this is a missionary activity where they're converting minors to Christianity. It was a bunch of nonsense. Like it had, but I say all that to say that the Israeli police showed up, and I saw them work for 5 hours to keep that crowd under control and to protect the right of people to come in and out of that worship conference in freedom. And they were being kicked and pushed and spit on, and they were sweating and working very hard. And I said at that moment, I thank God for the Israeli government, for the Israeli police, and for our enforcement agencies, that when we do have an issue, we are protected as Christian minorities. And that's the reality that we face in Israel.
That's so true. And I'd like to point to the greater picture here and start to contrast that a little bit with the surrounding nations in the region. there's been much talk, and I know, Ambassador Huckabee, you just had this famous or infamous, however you look at it, interview with Tucker Carlson, who is obviously engaged in framing this situation through a certain lens. So I'd love for you to talk about that, and also maybe talk about the greater picture, because I know there's this battle for public opinion, and Tucker's framing it as, you've got Israel that looks this way, and then you've got Qatar that looks this way. Let's talk about the realities, Qatar and Jordan and Syria, and what it's like to be a Christian in those societies versus in Israel. So, Ambassador Huckabee, I'll let you go first on that.
Well, it's pretty obvious if you look around the Middle East, the Christian population has been decimated. There are very few Christians left in many of these countries. Now, Tucker tries to say, oh, Qatar has a lot of Christians. What Tucker didn't tell you was that those Christians live in basically what amounts to a ghetto. They're only people who are there to be service workers. They can't leave the compound. They cannot worship freely. They cannot wear a cross. They cannot pray in public. There is no religious freedom there. In fact, they can get in serious trouble, and be punished brutally if they practice their faith as openly as I practice mine in Israel. Let's look at Bethlehem, just across the border. The worst thing that ever happened to the Palestinian people was Oslo. In Bethlehem, it used to be 80+% Christian, handful of Muslims, and a few others of various faiths. Today, that has split. It's now over 80% Muslim, 12 to 15% Christian. And the Christians weren't run out by Jews. They were run out by Muslims. And by the way, I tried to explain to Tucker, you know how many Jews live in Bethlehem? None. Not one Jew lives in Bethlehem. Don't blame Jews, or Christians for that matter, for what's happened there if you talk about the Palestinian Christians. And there are no Israelis who can even go into Bethlehem. There's a sign as you enter that says, if you're an Israeli, you are prohibited from going in. I can go because I'm an American. But Calev, who is Israeli, he can't even cross that border and go into the city of Bethlehem. So this is the kind of nonsense that people are just unaware of. In the meantime, you have an open society in Israel. People, they elect their government. That's refreshing. But then they can criticize their government. And boy, oh boy, do they ever do it here. Only the United States is equal in electing people and then spending their entire term in office chewing them up and spitting them out. But that's really the sign of a healthy democracy. If you criticize the government and someone comes to your home tonight and takes you to jail or shoots you, that's not democracy. If you have the freedom to criticize your government and you still wake up and have breakfast the next day, you might be in a pretty unique place in the Middle East. In fact, you're going to only be in one place in the Middle East. You're in Israel.
Said.
Yeah, I'd add to that, before, I think one Tucker Carlson interview before he spoke with the ambassador was with a patriarch of the Anglican Church in Jordan. And he spoke to some business people in Jordan, and they talked about how wonderful it is to be a Christian in Jordan. The issue that they never talked about was what happens to somebody who converts from Islam to Christianity in Jordan. Okay. So if you're born as a Christian and you're, seventh generation or 10th generation Christian, you can live in relative freedom. Yes, you're a dhimmi and you're not viewed exactly as like your Muslim citizens. But when somebody converts from Islam to Christianity, which I think should be a litmus test of any free society. By the way, in Israel, people convert from religion to religion and nothing happens. They maintain all of their civil rights and absolutely no problem. A Muslim who converts to Christian in Jordan loses all of their civil rights. If they are taken to court, they will lose their marriage, they will lose their land, they'll lose their right to vote and to be elected. It's called civil death. I have friends that went through this that had to, move to other countries because literally they became somebody completely devoid of any rights. That's what it means. Now, if we zoom in from Jordan into Judea and Samaria, the Palestinian territory, today on the books, the official policy of the Palestinian Authority is death penalty for conversion from Islam to Christianity. It's even death penalty for selling land from a Muslim to a Jew or a Christian. Like this is people who want to run forward and recognize this authority as a Palestinian state as soon as possible. You're not doing the Palestinians any favor, because it's an Islamic police state dictatorship like all of our neighbors that persecutes the rights of minorities. And there couldn't be a greater difference than what's happening to Israel. Here's the difference. If you're harassed by, some kind of marginal groups within Israel because of your faith in Christianity or whatever it is, the government will come and protect you. But if you're a Muslim who converts to Christianity in any of the countries around us, the government will come and arrest you and persecute you and punish you. So there's really no comparison. I'll also say that we have a very robust, not only media, which was mentioned by Ambassador Huckabee, which criticizes our leaders freely every day, no pun intended, crucifies our leaders like on a daily basis. Okay, we also have a very robust judicial system and an independent court system. And yes, I have represented actually thousands of cases now for rights of Christians, including in sticky issues like the law of return. And 99.9% of our cases that have gone to court, we have won, because we have a vibrant democracy with an independent court system that actually upholds the rule of law and definitely minority rights. And I'm very proud of that as an Israeli. If we compare that even to the Palestinian Authority, there's no independent court system. In fact, in Gaza, all the judges are appointed by Hamas. And in the West Bank, they're all appointed by Fatah. And I can tell you story after story of Christians from Bethlehem in which Muslim families came in and forcefully expropriated their properties, and it went to a Palestinian court, and they gave the property rights to the people who stole the land, not to the original Christian owners. And just Muslims forcefully taking over properties in these areas in Judea and Samaria underneath the Palestinian Authority. So that there is no separation of powers. There is no independent court system. There is no rule of law in these Muslim-led administrations around us.
So thank you so much, both of you. And I'd like to also talk about just the battle for public opinion and this sort of modus operandi of the opposition. And I want to frame it for our viewers to understand that, as I said before, Israel is a free country. It's a democracy. And much like the United States, that comes with all of the beautiful freedoms and liberties that we have the privilege of living under. But what's happening on the public front for these entities, and there are many of these voices that are emerging that are extremely highly critical of Israel, with a level of scrutiny that I think is, of course, based on extreme bias, where people like Tucker will take a solitary or a very fringe incident, these incidents of Christian clergy, maybe in the old city, somebody gets spit on or something like that, and he'll use it to frame an entire society around it. So can you just talk a little bit more about that?
Yeah, I mean, first of all, the way Tucker characterizes the treatment of Christians here is utterly disingenuous. When you speak a half-truth as if it is the whole truth, it becomes an untruth. And that's what Tucker Carlson is so guilty of. He takes something, an incident, he then magnifies it as if it is the norm and creates a frame in which he says, this is how it happens all the time. So he says, there are Christians who have been spit on in the old city. Okay, it's happened. And you know who condemns it? The prime minister does, the president does, the president of Israel, the foreign minister does, the Knesset does. Universally, it's condemned. Nobody applauds this. It is no different than when someone is walking on the streets of New York wearing a kippah and is spat upon by the Free Palestine crazies. So it's obnoxious behavior, it's criminal behavior, it's punishable behavior, and I find it repulsive. But it doesn't happen to many people very often, and when it does, it happens at the hands of people who are universally shunned and considered totally out of line. So that's why I find it so very unacceptable for Tucker Carlson to try to present it that if you're a Christian, you better not walk around and let anyone know you are, because you're not likely to make it very well, and you'll be spit on and maybe have the stuffing beat out of you. Well, that's just not true. Look, I've been talking about how many times I've been here and how long now I've lived here. Nobody's ever heckled me. Nobody's ever spit on me. I think most people in Israel know that I'm an evangelical Christian believer. I've never had someone come up on the street and say, I wish you'd go back home. Now, interestingly, I've had Orthodox Jews, I've had secular Jews come up, shake my hand, want to take a picture with me, and thank me for being their friend. And that's what I experience, not someone trying to hit me with a club or spit on me. That has not ever been my experience. And I think it is the experience of very few people. It is a safe place for Christians to be. I go to church every Sunday here in Israel. I find that I'm surrounded by people who love Jesus and they talk about him openly, freely, pray in his name. Nobody comes in and says, if you ever say that again, we're taking you down to the jail. It doesn't work like that. And I feel no intimidation whatsoever being a Christian. In fact, I have people that even say to me, we're glad you are a Christian and not Jewish, because if you were to take the positions you take in support of the Jewish people, in support of the state of Israel, and our relationship with the United States, and if you were to do that as a Jew, everybody would say, yeah, what's he going to do? He's Jewish. He's part of the tribe. We don't have much choice. When I say it, people say, you don't have to say that. How come you do? And I say, because I believe it, because I've witnessed it. I am an eyewitness to the power of what God has done in this country. I think it has more impact.
100%. And I agree. And I think the spitting issue is horrible. As an Israeli citizen, I'm ashamed and embarrassed of it. But it takes place in a very, very specific place in the Christian quarter where these hooligans get out of line. They know priests are going to be walking down the street. They wait for them. The police has tried to prevent this from happening. You're talking about rebellious youth that are doing this to make a statement. And we don't have a criminal code that illegalizes spitting, unfortunately. So it's very hard to enforce. What about the 180 to 200,000 Christians, Arab Christian minorities who live in Israel, wear crosses proudly around their neck, live in places as, in Jerusalem, Nazareth, Capernaum, and all these important sites from the New Testament? The people who live there are mostly Christian Arabs. And you can go interview them. I guarantee this, 99.9% of them have never been spit upon. They have good relations with the Israeli neighbors. They're integrated into the education system. The president of Bank Leumi, Israel's largest national bank, is an Arab Christian. Has anyone ever spit on him? No. People are completely integrated in every level of society. A lot of Christians now are volunteering for the IDF, and sitting on our courts and our legal system, being elected into parties in our Knesset and in our parliament. So there's full integration, and the vast majority never experiences something like that. And the people who do that are like the 0.0001% of Israeli society that need to be condemned and need to be stopped. It's complicated, but to somehow blow that out of proportion and say this is what Israel does to Christians it's a form of blood libel, actually.
And then conversely, if you move into, you said something very wise. I really like that about, I don't remember how you said that, Ambassador Huckabee, about if you tell a half-truth, it becomes an untruth.
If you tell a half-truth as a whole truth, it becomes the untruth.
I love that. And so you see Tucker framing Israel in a negative light, but he uses the same modus operandi. It's a form of psyops when he's describing places like Qatar, or as many people pronounce it, Qatar. And he'll say that it's a free society, and he's buying a home there. And there are more Christians in Qatar than there are in Israel, which I'm not sure anyone knows the exact number of Christians in Qatar, but what we do know is there are about 1.2 million humans living in Qatar, this very small country. 350,000 of them are Qatari citizens that have full civil rights and full rights. Well, they have whatever rights Qatari citizens have. I wouldn't say they have full civil rights because it is an autocracy. But then the vast majority of people that residents of Qatar, are foreign workers that have little to no rights, that are held in the worst human conditions possible. Essentially, what has been defined even by as biased organizations as the UN have been defined as slave labor conditions. And yes, some of those are Christians, but they do not have the right to practice their religion openly. But so he's doing the same thing and using a half truth and portraying it as the whole truth in a positive way in a very, very dark place like Qatar.
Well, it's characteristic of how Tucker is engaging not just in that one issue, but in so many issues. He takes a straw man and he builds it up, and it's based on a lot of innuendo and sometimes reckless allegations. In the interview he did with me, he made a very reckless allegation against President Isaac Herzog, saying he was on Epstein's island. Well, he wasn't. He was in Tel Aviv speaking in front of 1,000 people on the day that he was supposed to be there. It wasn't even his full name. It wasn't Isaac Herzog. It was just the last name Herzog. Could have been anybody. But the point is, he openly said that it was President Herzog who was there. Now, when the president, I think, threatened a lawsuit of defamation, and I hope he files it, quite frankly. I think it would be lovely if he did. Tucker edited that out of the program completely, and then he issued a video apology. I think he was covering himself in that, but that was reckless. And that's the kind of thing that he does. He made the ridiculous allegation about a young boy in Gaza being shot by an IDF soldier. Now, he had this guy named Tony Aguilar on his program who had been fired by GHF. They didn't want him back. They were ready to get rid of him. And he said, if you don't hire me back, I'm going to come after you guys. Well, they didn't hire him back because there was no way they were going to. He was a horrible employee. So he made up this ridiculous story that he watched an IDF soldier shoot a little boy. What he didn't realize was that little boy, we found him less than a week later after the allegation. We extricated him out of Gaza, got him to a safe place, took 4 countries involved to get it done. Very delicate operation. I was heavily involved on a personal level, so I knew the details very well. And when I explained that to Tucker, his response was, well, Aguilar believed it was true. And I said, Tucker, this is not an acceptable response. If you see someone shoot a little boy, you're not just mistaken about seeing that. You either saw that and you will stick to that story, or you're lying about it. And it was that kind of thing that Tucker is very good at. But I wish I could spend more time because I'd love to continue the visit. But it's been a delight just getting to really bring some truth and light to what was a very challenging conversation with Tucker Carlson. I hope people, when they hear him say something, they will try to find ways to verify, because he says a lot of things that do not stack up to the facts.
One of the things that he said, thank you so much, Ambassador Huckabee, is he challenged you on your loyalty to the United States. And I just want to go on record as saying thank you so much for your loyalty to the United States. And as such, in believing the best thing, or one of the best things for the United States is to have a healthy relationship with Israel, its greatest ally in the region. So we know that he made that horrible allegation towards you directly, and we're just so grateful for all the work that you do on behalf, as an American, I can say, on behalf of our country.
Well, thank you very much.
And I want to thank you as well as a lawyer who's a member of the local Christian community, where we have had those cases where we've needed to have a friendly conversation with the Israeli government and to say, look, this needs to change or that needs to change. And you've been such a great, both a courageous, honest, and effective voice on making sure that the rights of Christians are protected, and we have the highest civil status. And you're a real friend of our community, not just a friend of our community, you're a member of our community, and really practice what you preach. And so I really appreciate you, and thank you for all of your hard work. And we pray that God keeps you healthy and strong. We love you and your work as ambassador. So.
Same here. Thank you both. God bless you all, and look forward to seeing you soon. Thanks.
Regarding the half-truths that Tucker Carlson is saying, that type of gaslighting is terrible. But the big question is, what agenda is it serving? And this is really the dangerous thing, okay? Because there's a state-backed, well-funded, highly motivated, well-organized campaign to destroy the Judeo-Christian foundations of Western civilization and, by extension, Israel. And Tucker right now is the champion of that crowd. I mean, he's fighting against the relationship between Christians and Jews, between the relationship between America and the United States. It's, if Christians and Jews can stand together strong against this onslaught against our way of life, this strange coalition of the Islamists, the extreme wokeists, and the communists, we can win this battle, but Tucker is fighting for them. So what is he doing? A guy that claims to be a Christian, a conservative Christian by all means, he is helping the enemies of Western civilization deconstruct the most important alliances within the beating heart of our society and our way of life. And so that's what he should be ashamed of, beyond the fact that he's spewing all these half-truths and so on and so forth. He's become a very dangerous mouthpiece because he has a great following, and it's easy when you have disillusioned men who do have economic challenges and maybe a substance abuse challenges, and see the decay in certain areas of where they live in their American society, and they're looking for somebody to scapegoat. And then he comes along and reinforces these anti-Semitic tropes and blames the Jews for everything. This is terrible, and it has the potential of destroying the beautiful Judeo-Christian foundations of Western civilization, and that's why it's such a big concern to me.
I think also it's just important to note, and I think what Ambassador Huckabee said at the end of his remarks was so important. He encouraged people to look into things. If you just go a layer or two deep in anything that Tucker has to say, whether it's on Google or ChatGPT or whatever, you can find the truth. It's not very difficult to do. He deals in the realm of innuendo, in the realm of emotion, but even his statements, he beats his chest about being an American. When he announced that he was purchasing a home in Qatar, his reason for doing that, and I'm ashamed as an American to have somebody out there representing our country in such a way. He said, the reason that I could purchase a home in Qatar is because I'm American and my country allows me the right to do that. Yes, it does. But does that mean that morally you should go and purchase a home in a country that literally 80%, over 80% of the population are essentially living in the conditions of slave labor? And yes, I'm sure they would roll out the red carpet for you to live in abject luxury while you're living there and building whatever empire you're building on the backs of just good people from all over the world. But to do that and then frame it as the reason that you're doing that is because you're an American and beat your chest over that is absolutely immoral.
But wait a second. It goes far beyond the treatment of minorities in Qatar. What is Qatar doing in the United States? It is a Muslim Brotherhood aligned regime that has a goal of Islamic conquest and an international Islamic caliphate, which subjects the whole world, including the United States, to Sharia law. Go look at exactly not only what they say, but what they're doing. And the $100 billion that they've invested in the United States university campuses over the last 20 years, where they bought up Middle East apartments and are really convincing a whole generation to hate their own society and the principles that have created the foundation for the freest society in the world. They are the snake in the grass of Western civilization, definitely in the United States, and they have a goal to destroy the very fabric of the United States. And so that is who you're trying to justify. That is who you're saying, as an American, you're proud to buy a home over there. You should be ashamed of yourself.
Agreed. And that is why this past week in Nashville, Tennessee, everything that we're talking about today is one of the reasons that our inaugural event was held to launch the Judeo-Christian Zionist Congress, a group of leaders coming together to boldly plant our flag in the ground and acknowledge the Judeo-Christian foundation upon which Western civilization was built. You do not have to be a religious person to understand that this country, the United States, was built on a value system. And if you attack that value system, you're attacking the foundation upon which our country was built, a country that has been the freest, most prosperous, most humane society that has ever existed on planet Earth. It was built on this value system. And Calev, we came together and started something in Nashville, putting that flag in the ground. I'd love for you to talk, share your heart about that. But also, I know that you're heading up the charge to see necessary change at the societal level in Israel so that people understand this relationship.
So a few things. So, in 1897, Herzl gathered the first Zionist Congress. And at that time, 10 of the 208 delegates at that first Congress were Christians. These are simple Christians who read their Bible, Isaiah, Jeremiah, Ezekiel, and they talked about, or they read these prophecies they talk about the Jews coming back from all the nations back to the land in the latter days, and they believed that this is prophecies that would be fulfilled, and they thought, well, maybe Herzl's the guy to get it done. He wasn't doing it actually from religious motivation. He was responding to a massive wave of anti-Semitism spreading across Europe at that time, and thought this is what we have to do for the survival of our people. Many Israelis don't know that Christians were involved in that Congress. But what they're even less aware of is that today, the vast majority of Zionists in the world are not Jewish. So depending on who you ask, you have between 600 million and 800 million Christians around the world who love Israel, pray for Israel on a daily basis, support Israel. I think just since the beginning of the war in October 2023, Christians have donated well over between $2 and $3 billion somewhere of aid, of help, standing together with Israel, this extension of Western democracy in the Middle East. But most Israelis are unaware of that. I'm not just saying this, because this is my opinion. My colleagues and I actually ran polls about 6 months ago. And with focus groups in Israel, thousands of people. And in our focus groups, only 2 of 10 people have even heard of an evangelical Christian, and only one of them thought this could be a beneficial thing for the state of Israel. When we asked, do you think these evangelicals could help fight anti-Semitism globally, only 18% said definitely yes. But when we said, well, what if you understood that there are people who believe in the Bible, who believe in Judeo-Christian values, who share, our perspective on sanctity of life and rule of law, etc., who really love Israel, vote based on Israeli issues in their countries and so on and so forth. How many do you think they might be able to help with fighting, anti-Semitism globally? That number jumped up to 89%, which means that there's an education gap. And for too long in the Israeli public education system, the main thing they teach about Christianity in most schools still is like the Inquisitions and the Crusades and the very dark chapters in Jewish-Christian relations in history. And so if that's who you think the Christians are, and every time you turn on any digital media, you see somebody somewhere, the non-Jews demonstrating against Israel on some university campus, in some city worldwide, demonstrating on behalf of Hamas and against Israel. It could be a pretty dark picture. Like, you could feel very isolated, somewhat afraid, somewhat alone. And so one of the reasons we created the Judeo-Christian Zionist Congress was to bring the story of hope to the Israeli people. We created a steering committee that has representatives of the Southern Baptist Convention that has 45 million people, the Assemblies of God Church with 86 million people. The United Pentecostal Church International had 25 million affiliated members worldwide. We have a steering committee of people who represent organizations with an aggregate membership of like 280 million people that are actually gathering together and saying, hey, if Zionism in 1897 was about the survival of the Jewish people, Zionism in 2026 is about the survival of the West. And if we join together, Christians and Jews together, to fight for our values, people with massive followings at celebrity level, we had several Hollywood actors and professional sports players and sports coaches and influencers, not only in sports and education, but in government and policy and media and education and faith communities. If we can really get our act together, not just have another nice event, but to actually create an infrastructure of collaboration, that is an amazing story to bring to Israel. In order for the Israeli public to become aware of this, in order for the government to understand that this is an important issue, in order to continue improving the rights and recognition of Christian minorities within Israel. There needs to be a mutual embracing. If we're going to win this battle, we have to close the gap between the Israeli people, not just the Israeli government, the Israeli people and the non-Jewish Zionists around the world. If we bring together both these communities of faith in a much more effective manner, with real relationship, depth of a relationship, then we can protect and advance Western civilization and Judeo-Christian society. So that's what the Congress is all about. We had an amazing event, and obviously you were there to host it with me. So I don't know if you want to add anything to that.
Just to say that, look, it's understandable. Israel's a country that's between 70 and 80 years old. Okay, it's a young country born out of the ashes of the Holocaust, if you will, where the Jews were marched into death camps, and in many cases, in some cases, there was a sign above the gate that said, "You're here because you killed our Christ." So it's important for the rest of the world to understand that that perspective coming out of extreme trauma at a societal level like that, and then a country, a nation being built, and it's not that far behind us. And so these tensions just exist at a societal level. And I know we're working hard to really initiate projects that connect Israelis with non-Jewish Zionists from around the world that share the same value system and support the existence of the state of Israel. And, for Israelis to be able to feel that in a different way, yes, we want to change the education system. I know that you and Ambassador Huckabee are working hard over there to initiate some of these changes, and even at the governmental level, just getting people to see and understand things, and pushing that ball down the field, if you would. But also, we will be initiating projects at a very human level, concerts and films and all types of different things that we don't have to create a reality. We simply have to welcome people on both sides into the reality that already exists. And that's exactly what we're going to be doing through this Congress. So I'm super excited about it. I know we've got a family, an ecosystem of partners that, at every level of society that believe in this, believe in what we're doing, and just can't wait to continue moving that forward. All right, Calev, I'm going to give you the last word.
Well, a lot of people have asked me, wow, you did an amazing event, an amazing Congress. How can we help? And so the first thing that you can do if you share our values and want to help us advance our goals is go to JCZ Congress in whatever social media platform you're at, whether it's Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, X, and check out our content. The content is amazing. You can visit our website at jczcongress.com. You can see all the full videos of all of our keynote speakers and highlights from our panels. It was an amazing event, folks, and we're excited about building out the collaborative infrastructure to take this whole thing to the next level. We had 400 leaders, 180 organizations represented at the event, and we planted our flag in the ground and decided that we will set our personal and organizational egos aside to fight together for our way of life and civilization. It's very, very inspirational content. You're going to love it. Go check it out. JCZ Congress.
If you're an organizational leader, thought leader, person of influence, and you want to get involved, reach out. You can reach out through our social media channels, or you can reach out through the website. We want to hear from you and partner with you.
Absolutely.
There you go. You got the literal, actual last word.